I talk about that with a lot of these programs with our clients that it really does need to start with energy. And the reason I say that is, again, as we've talked about earlier today, that's where there's a real, very clear-cut value proposition around return on investment. Whether the payback period is immediate, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, pick your time horizon. All of you in helping to identify these types of initiatives that can have a material impact and reduce consumption, reduce the cost basis of what drives that companies to really make these fundamental decisions. And in a lot of cases, this savings that's produced allows some of the more non-tangible sustainability programs to be funded within a company. Very important, I think, point for all of us to keep in mind. This is an interesting statistic that I had heard a few years back, and actually I'd heard a number that was a little bit less than this, but what this has really been based on a lot of our empirical data and looking at these portfolios globally. 40% of building energy use is avoidable. It's a huge number, and whether you argue that it's 30 or 50%, it is significant. And the other thing that's very significant that we find over and over again as we take on new clients and we work in detail on these portfolios and look for savings opportunities, a tremendous amount of them have a very short payback period, meaning that they are not only financeable, but they're actionable, and the corporations can understand this. It's a great story, this set of numbers that really does play itself out, and the opportunity for the amount of work that can occur there over the coming years is just tremendous. So what are some of the drivers for energy retrofit? Again, it's always fun and exciting to talk about brand new buildings that are being built, but as we all know, over 95% of the built environment that we're going to be dealing with, especially in this country over the next 10 to 20 years, is an existing built environment, 95%. And that proves itself out as an average, not only through downturns in economy, but also the upturns as well, kind of a blended figure. So really working with existing buildings, that is what it is all about. Financial payback we talked about, extremely important in terms of thinking about how do you lead with the business case for this versus a nebulous idea that, hey, this would be a great thing to do and we need money to do this and it's all going to work out in the end. Really having a very well thought out business case that shows that simple payback and describes that IRR in detail is very important. And that's something that even when we're looking at new technologies, when companies come to us with not only services but new products, it's one of the first questions we ask. Really show us the empirical data on what that return looks like. Carbon emission reduction, we touched on that a little bit. This is becoming more common, and it's interesting, even though in a lot of cases, and a lot of it is not a mandate per se yet, we see that a number of companies in different sectors are moving into the voluntary reporting, a lot to do with the fact that their competitors are doing this, and they don't want to be viewed as left out or trying to hide something. It's very, very interesting. So this peer pressure within specific competitive sets, whether it be technology companies, banking, financial service companies, insurance companies, etc., is a real positive trend toward driving this kind of voluntary reporting that obviously gets these firms established for what could be mandates that may be coming at a federal or national or a federal or state level down the road. And then finally, one of the other just big challenges that's out there, and it falls back into the financial stack, is rent premiums associated with these changes. Making a building more energy efficient reduces the cost base for operating that building. It should and does drive stronger net operating income, which actually does affect building valuation. But making that linkage all the way through the financial stack to the tenants looking at rent and a building and what buildings sell for, there's a lot of steps that go through the process. And because, quite frankly, we've been in a very tough recession the last few years, we haven't seen the velocity of buildings changing hands to be able to say, more efficient building, less efficient building, what do they trade for, and what kind of financial premiums or incentives were tied to those renovations. That will change in the coming years, but that is a reality of what we see today.